Hi, I'm Lance Henriksen. You're watching Bryan Lomax Movie Talk. Don't turn it off.
Hello there and welcome to my review of Octopussy. This is the second to last film by Roger Moore in the title role of James Bond, Agent 007. Now, this film was released in the same year that Sean Connery actually made a comeback to the Bond role in the film Never Say Never Again, which obviously had nothing to do with the MGM films, was a separate entity, so to speak. But it is still a Bond film, and I will be reviewing that next after this one, so look out for that. But Octopussy, where are we with this? Well, Octopussy sees Bond basically going on the hunt for the killers of 009, Agent 009. It turns out that the people responsible for the death of Agent 009 are caught up in a smuggling ring. They're smuggling fake jewels around, basically making money off them. But this is a cover for an even greater plan by General Orlov, a Russian general, to smuggle a nuclear bomb across the Russian border and set it off so that he will basically disrupt the talks that the Russian government is currently having to disarm their nuclear weapons. The plot, quite frankly, doesn't really make a right lot of sense, but it is what it is. It's a Bond plot. The real question is this film any good? As far as Roger Moore Bond films go, I think it stacks up pretty well. It's actually one of my favourites of his. It's full of holes, don't get me wrong, but I think there's a lot of action in this film. There's filmed very well by director John Glen. It's not quite as heavy on some of the jokes that we've come to expect with more films that kind of turn me off a little bit, although they are still in there. For the most part, yeah, it's a good, entertaining film. Now, first of all, I do need to say that the villains in this film are probably the weakest part of it. The Russian general, played by Steven Berkoff, as I mentioned, is absolutely terrible. Now, he is the villain in this that probably has the most motivation. He's the one that I recognise, I understand why he is doing what he is doing. But his performance, Steven Berkoff's performance, is so over the top, so ridiculous and hammy that it just switches me off to the character straight away. And he's like that all throughout the film in the few scenes that he has. So we're left with the other villain, the other main villain, arguably the main villain, and that's a man called Kamal Khan. He's played by Louis Jourdan. He's basically, he's in it for the money, basically. But as I say, the motivations for Orlov are a lot stronger to me. I think he as a villain should have been bumped up a bit. I think he should have been given more screen time, and they should have recast him with someone who could have, I don't know, lent a bit more gravitas to that role. The title song for this film by Rita Coolidge, All Time High, is quite frankly an all-time low, not counting Man with a Golden Gun by Lulu. The main henchman that we get in this film for Kamal Khan is a man called Gobinder. He's played by Gabir Bedi, and while he's okay, he's entertaining on some levels, he's just quite a little bit bland, really, for a Bond henchman. He doesn't really have any gimmicks. He starts to have one at the beginning when we first introduced to him, and he crushes these balls in his hands, and you think, oh right, he's super strong, but they never really play on that anywhere else in the film. So it's a moment of menace, I guess, which is never really, it never really comes to fruition throughout the rest of the film. We do get a little sequence in which this guy with a yo-yo razor blade thing comes into it, and I think him as a character, even though he doesn't really do a right lot in the film, he's only in it for a small amount, he probably would have been a better henchman, I think, if they'd have pulled him out and had him running throughout the rest of the film, because that weapon that he uses is pretty cool. The final set of villains in this, again some henchmen, are a couple of twins called Mishka and Grishka, who kind of look bizarrely like a cross between Gary Oldman and Art Garfunkel. I kept thinking that every time they were on screen, but their characters are pretty interesting. Again, they have the gimmick. They're these twins and they're these knife throwers, and they pose a threat, a genuine threat for Bond. So that's nice on the villain side of things. We do get a return to this series by Maude Adams, who was in The Man with the Golden Gun. She played a rather thankless role in that, but she was one of the best things of that film, so I'm glad they brought her back. Her character here is maybe not as strong. She is the title character. She plays Octopussy, but I feel that at points in the film when her character could have stepped up and kind of does so in some places, she's then kind of battered down, and Bond then has to come in and rescue her or whatever. So any strength they build up in the character, particularly with the base of operations that she has, the smuggling ring that she operates, and the army that she is in charge of, it's kind of undermined by the fact that they never let her as a character show power by herself, if you get my meaning. She's kind of, during fight sequences, she's taken out rather than doing the taking out, which was a little disappointing, because Maude Adams is a really good actress and she does bring something to this role, which I think if in the hands of someone else, this role would have been completely flat and completely unmemorable. So I'll give props to her for that. As usual, Bond gets a sidekick whenever he goes to whatever country it is he's doing his investigating in. He's usually paired up with another agent. In this case, he's paired up with a man named VJ, and I really liked VJ. I liked the character of VJ. It's a shame to see him, to see his demise in this film, because I did warm to him as the film was going on. He gets a nice little car chase sequence with Bond where he genuinely brings a little bit of humour into it, a bit of warmth, which has been missing, I think, from some of the people that Bond gets paired up with in these foreign countries. So yeah, that was nice to see. We do get our replacement for Bernard Lee as M in this film. He's played now by a man named Robert Brown. This guy doesn't have anywhere near the kind of class that Bernard Lee has. He's a little bit, I don't know, just soft, I guess. Bernard Lee had this attitude with Bond. He always had this kind of banter between the two of them, where you felt that on some levels he didn't like Bond, but he did appreciate him. And I don't get any of that with Robert Brown. His performance is just a little bit flat. He allows the character of M to serve the function that he's meant for, but anything beyond that is just missing. And finally, with returning characters, of course, we get Moneypenny. Now, she does have a scene in this film which is an improvement on the last one. She didn't really have a right lot of banter in For Your Eyes Only. It was quite a disappointment. She was just thrown in there for the sake of having Moneypenny in there. But even in this, she kind of gets the shaft a little bit. She gets a bit of short shrift, because they bring a younger model in, and they play on the fact that actually, you know what, Lois Maxwell is getting old now, and not many people are going to be kind of relating to her as the hot woman, and it's a shame, because they could inject more character in there, but instead they do a bit of a side swipe at the fact that she's getting old, and they bring this younger model in and kind of have a bit of banter about the fact that she is past her prime. There are some real standout action sequences in this film, particularly at the beginning. We get Bond flying this plane. It's like a fold-out plane. And it's basically the Moore era equivalent of Sean Connery's Little Nelly. This one is much, much better. Again, I attribute a lot of that to, well, the passage of time. Obviously they could do more with special effects and whatnot by this point, but also just the way it's shot with John Glen. He knows how to handle action, and it has one of the best explosions. The scene caps off with one of the best explosions I've ever seen in a Bond film up to this point. We have a really good kind of action sequence on a train towards the end, where Bond is trying to get on this train. There's some ropey bits in it with the like back screen projection and whatnot, but for the most part there's some really good stunt work, and some like the way it's cut, some quite fast cutting. It's quite tense, and this is as Bond is trying to get to a nuclear device, and there's a lot of tension in that setup as he's trying to get to the device, particularly when he's in the circus ring and he's trying to convince people that there's a bomb there. You know he's going to get to it, you know he's going to stop it. This is Bond, but there was actually a little bit of tension there in the way that people were kind of crowding him and stopping him from getting to it, and kind of it becomes frustrating. You're frustrated for Bond, and so that's good. I like that they're able to drum up that kind of emotion from the scene. That's a skill again that I attribute to John Glen as director. And finally, with the action sequences, there's a particularly strong one, especially in the stunt department, which is the final set piece on the plane when Kamal and Gobinder are trying to escape, and Bond is attached to the plane. He basically grips hold of this plane and goes up there, and some really good stunt work. You can't see any wires holding him on, and to be honest, watching it now, I see a particular shot in there that really reminds me of the new trailer, the latest trailer for Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, in which Tom Cruise is strapped to the plane. Now obviously that's great because you can see that it's Cruise. In this case you can't really see that it's Moore, but it's still a very similar shot, and it feels like a lot of inspiration may have been drawn particularly from this film for Rogue Nation. It's some really good stunt work, I must say. Now you may know, if you've been watching my Bond reviews in the past, that I've never really been the biggest fan of Q, as played by Desmond Llewellyn, but in this film actually I did not find him all that annoying. I actually got a bit of a chuckle out of him at one point when he takes a good dig at Bond. For the most part, the film zips along quite nicely, and it's that pace that kind of distracts you often at times from the lack of logic in many scenes. Like for one, when Kamal's kind of henchwoman, she seduces Bond so that she can get into his hotel room and make a daring heist in which she jumps out the window and steals his Fabergé egg, only then for Govinda to break into the hotel room and knock Bond out. Why go through all the trouble of the heist if Govinda was just going to go in there and take Bond out anyway? Surely it would have been better to just go in, take Bond out, then grab the egg. So there's things like that as well. And you know, like, again, obviously this is Bond, typical Bond. He comes into the final action set piece in the most conspicuous and least stealth-like device, which was a hot air balloon, and it's got a big Union Jack on it. And now this is funny, it did get a laugh out of me. It kind of harkens back to the parachute in Spy Who Loved Me that had the Union Jack on it, but come on, it's an air balloon. It's the slowest vehicle you could possibly find, and you're going into a camp that's probably going to be full of enemy fire. You're like a sitting duck. It's just, yes, it's like lack of logic in scenes like that just kind of detract from the action. But yeah, like I say, for the most part there's so much action going on in this, and the film moves at quite a nice pace that it's distracting enough for you to not care most of the time. As with some of the previous films, the violence in this for a PG is actually quite heavy. There's times like when Bond shoots a Russian soldier in the head and we see that bullet hole go straight in his head. There's a few kind of scare jumps in it, like when Bond gets locked in this kind of like a pantry thing, and there's some dead bodies in there, and we're never given an explanation as to who those dead bodies are. We just accept the fact that actually this is a nasty organisation and they've got bodies in the basement, but when he just bumps into them, it's quite a shock that we see it. And we also see Mishka and Grishka kill a couple of people with knives. We see the knives go into the body. So yeah, for a PG, they get away with quite a lot, I must say. So all in all, a very satisfying Bond film for Roger Moore's era. One of my favourites of his, I think, despite its many flaws, and I'll give it a 6.5 out of 10. So there you go, there's my review of Octopussy. Now the next Bond film that I will be reviewing is Never Say Never Again, which is, as I say, Sean Connery's return to the character. But if you would like to see more from me in the meantime, then please check out the rest of my channel, where you can find film reviews and other kinds of things like top 10s and whatnot. And also please be sure to check out Cine Clash. I've recently competed in that. It's the summer tournament, and that's hosted by ATZ. Just check his channel out, it's just called ATZ. But yeah, click subscribe as well, and please, if you like this video, share it and click the thumbs up button. But until next time, thanks for watching. But this is a cover for an even greater plan headed by General